Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Adult Child of Dysfunction. Today we have with us Lori Montre, and I am just going to let her jump right in, introduce herself. We talked a little bit about before, and I read a little of her bio, and she has a story. And of course, as we all have a story, but this one leads her to help people do amazing things. And I just want to jump right in and say, welcome, Lori.
Thank you, Tammy. I appreciate being here. Recently got to know your podcast a little bit, and what a beautiful place you've created here in the world for all of us to come and remember that our past doesn't have to define who we are and our future. So thank you for having me here.
Oh,
And it's
you're welcome.
yeah. Yeah. So as far as, who am I and what do I do? I was somebody who really struggled with my sense of being worthy and capable in the world. And I struggled most especially with my relationship with food for about 35 years. Emotional eating, binge eating, over-exercising, pretty much anything that can be done with food. Was on that pathway. And when I finally started to realize what was actually behind my patterns with food and all of my other patterns, the root of those challenges, when I finally started to understand that and started to put together what I needed to heal, I thought to myself, I've got to do this in my life. And that's when I decided to leave my practice as a corporate lawyer and go into this work full time, training myself, getting educated, and really understanding our patterns and why we do what we do. And it has led me to not only to the work that I do, but I've just completed my first solo book project, which is called You're Not the Problem. And it really dives into understanding and explaining our behaviors, these behaviors that we think like, why do I do that? Why can't I get my shit together? Why, whatever it is, there's a reason for it. And it stems back to the adaptations that we made in response to our childhood experiences. And when we look at it from that lens, we can become curious about it, and then we can give ourselves the conditions we need to adapt again, rather than staying stuck in, adaptations that no longer serve us.
Exactly. And I love that you talk about just the fact that you think logically we know. And even if we go through therapy, you can go to therapy for 10 years and logically they'll say, well, this is why you do this and this is why you do this, but it's not enough. It's not enough being aware of why. You need to dig down and pull it out of that root, and it's like pulling a weed out at the root. You got to get all the way down there to all of that subconscious stuff. And I'm sure that's what with the beliefs and the patterns, because I don't know how I hear it every single day. I know I shouldn't be like this and I know why I am like this, but I still do it. I
Yeah.
still people please. I still cringe when I want to do something and can't do it. And talk a little bit about that. Like let's first go back. I'm going to go back a little bit because they don't really know your story. You had the problems with the eating. So
Mhm.
did that stem from trauma as a child? Like was that your comfort food? Like was food your comfort? Was that your escape, or how did that start?
Yeah. So I was the sixth out of seven children. So when I arrived on the scene, there was plenty going on. Right, everybody had their own shit to do. My mom was doing her best, but she was very overwhelmed. Come from a traumatic background herself, and really I really had the sense from my earliest time that I was a burden in my home. I was another butt to wipe, I was another mouth to feed, and it was clear, that I stretched my caregivers very thin. And I really obviously struggled with that. And then around age 4, I was sexually abused for a time, for about 6 months as a 4 year old, and I had nowhere to turn. And I couldn't turn to my mother. She already, I was afraid of her reaction. My abuser told me it was my fault. If I told anyone, I would get in trouble. And so I just locked that away. I didn't know what to do with it. I got very, very skilled at disassociation and just, going into freeze.
Yeah.
and not really being there. And I needed something though, right? I needed comfort. I needed soothing. I needed something to quiet the noise inside my body. And that's when I started turning to food. I mean, it was available, it worked, and it made a lot of sense. And so from about the age of 4 or 5, I started using food, and it had nothing to do with hunger or physical need. It was truly my emotional support, something I could turn to without having to ask, without feeling bad. I wasn't burdening the food with my problems. It was happy,
Right, right.
to supply me with that. So that's, and that kind of, that's the setup, right? But the thing about trauma and about experiences is that it's, yes, about the events themselves to some degree, but more so what gets built on them, right? Because those experiences changed the way I saw myself, changed the way I saw the world, changed the way I saw other people. And so I built an entire life based on that framework. And it was, a life based on adaptations. It wasn't who I was or what I needed or what I desired. It was entirely based on the experiences that I had as a young one.
Yeah, it was literally adapting in order to survive.
Yeah,
And
precisely.
and and it's amazing for the people listening. You've probably heard us talk about it before on this podcast. Up until about the age of 7, you're basically in this completely moldable, semi-hypnotic, like there's not a lot of processing. Like the fact that you can look back now and go, when I was 4, I didn't have anybody to turn to. At 4, you didn't process that.
Not
You
at
didn't,
all. Yeah.
you just, you reached out for mommy, I'm sure, but then you got that get away, I can't be bothered kind of attitude. So immediately your
Mhm.
brain thinks, and it's amazing how quickly, like you were talking about, like, well, you weren't talking about it, but you were inferring, like referencing like the big trauma, the little trauma. Like what happened to you at 4 is a huge, huge thing. And if you cannot get that and deal with that and process that, I mean, that carried with you until how old?
Yeah, I mean, man, I kind of use my right around turning 40 as my time when I could be in life and think, okay, I'm doing pretty well. I think I really have a handle on, the understanding and have the tools that I need. But so 35 years of
Right.
intense struggle with myself
Yeah.
and believing that I was the problem.
Absolutely. And just not worthiness. And I say that for everybody listening to this podcast. That is the underlying belief. At the root of everything, it's that you're just not good enough, or you're not enough, or
Yeah.
you're not worthy. You said worthiness. You use some of these words a lot, and those are words that people, that's what gets built into their belief system, and that's what we do. That is you and me and people, that we bring that out, and that's what we need to change, because it's so sad how it gets put there,
Oh my
you know,
goodness.
and
Isn't
and
it? Yeah.
even if no one ever says the words, that's what's so crazy, is you're just this little, like I said, this pliable sponge, and you're absorbing it. And even a look from someone that, makes you think you did something wrong. It's like every single thing, all you're doing is absorbing at that age. And then it's
Mhm.
like, okay, now what do I do with this? So you talked about at about 40, you were like, okay, now I have the tools. What are some of
Mhm.
those tools that you acquired or got or used?
Yeah, I mean so the tools is basically my current modern day freedom formula. And so I've broken that down into 3 phases. And these are the tools. In the first phase is the nervous system and the patterns and understanding the patterns, because all of us, whether we've had those incredibly traumatic experiences or not, all of us have adapted, right? So
Yes.
you and I adapted. We had experiences that where people on the outside might look in and say, oh yeah, that's a big T trauma. But all of us, no matter who we are, adapted to our environment. It's just something that we do as humans. And so, that could be for one person, it might be, circumstances like mine or like yours. And for someone else, it might be the feeling, I didn't get invited to the birthday party, and I always felt like, I was an outsider to the cool kids, or whatever it is, right? And that's
Whatever.
not to minimize any of the experiences, but the adaptations, they form anyway, and for
Yeah.
the reasons why you said, up until certainly the age of 7, and we think it might even be longer. We are just showing up in the world trying to figure things out.
Right.
And and what you said about we get the look, or we get, the response, but then something more powerful happens, because now, once that's put into place, now I go out into the world and I have other interactions, and I'm assuming that those people are having the same interaction with me, because now my brain is trained to see the world in this way. So I may, run across someone who's having a bad day. Maybe they're constipated. Maybe someone just stepped on their toe and they have a look on their face, and that look becomes about me now. And
Mm-hmm.
I live in a different world because I had those experiences. Someone with a different type of experience might look at someone with that look on their face and say, "Oh, they must be having a bad day. Hi, how are you?" And whereas I'm looking at them and think, "Oh my gosh, they hate me. They see how awful I am." Right? It's a story, and that's why I said earlier, it's yes, what happened to you, but it's more the story that gets built on top of those experiences that become so damaging, because then they go on your whole life and
Mm.
create, just injury after injury, pain after pain. So they are not limited at all to the time frame in which they occur.
Yeah, not at all. And I talk about that with one of my clients, and we laugh so hard because she was one of those that would walk into a room, and if someone looked at her cross-eyed, she's like, "What did I do wrong? Oh my gosh, I stink at this. Oh my gosh, I'm doing something," and immediately went into this thing. And I was like, if someone raises an eyebrow, just from
Yeah.
now on, every time you see someone raise an eyebrow in your direction, assume that they have a really annoying itch on their eyebrow. Just assume that.
Yeah.
And so, like, when you see
Yeah.
someone's eyes go up, like, and after she said after a couple months of doing that, she literally would like touch her own eye just to see if something was there, but it no longer had that attachment to
Yeah.
stress. And she had to really and that was just rewiring, and it was just
Exactly.
telling a different story and over and over and over again. But
Hmm.
you're so right about I talk about it all the time about scanning for the negative.
Hmm.
When you grew up and you were always on that edge and that fight and flight, and you were always waiting for that next thing to happen, you learned to scan for bad.
Hmm.
You didn't
Hmm.
learn, so immediately you saw something and you assumed it was bad. If someone was walking at you, it was because they were going to confront you, not that they wanted to hug you. So
Right. Yeah.
you really, it takes a long time too. So you didn't finish. You started talking. I mean, I cut you off a little bit, or we got on a tangent, whatever you want to
Yeah,
call
we
it.
got excited about
So
something.
we
Yeah.
we got a lot to cover here, and I know you have some really good information. So you talk about the nervous system and the patterns goes in that step one, in that first
Yes,
phase.
absolutely. Yeah, because
Okay.
our adaptations, essentially, they have so many of us living in survival mode, right? Where our nervous system is highly activated. We're hypervigilant. We are, scanning for danger. We're all the things. And as a first step, we need to understand our nervous system. We need to reprogram, right, at that foundational level, because
Right.
if our nervous system is not healthy and well regulated, it doesn't matter how much mindset work we attempt to do, or whatever else we try to stack on top of it. I think of our nervous system and the regulation there as like our strong, sturdy basement. It's like
Right.
the foundation of our house that we want to build, and the house being our life. And if we go and we start trying to construct second floor balconies and we have no foundation, it crumbles over and
Right.
over. And then we use that as evidence against ourselves that we can't change, that we can't accomplish. And in reality, what's happening is we just don't have that strong foundation that we need.
Right.
So the first phase, which is the first book here, You're Not the Problem, is all about the three things that the nervous system needs to come back to health and regulation. And those three things are safety, capacity, and energy. And when you have those things, you have the power to then start to look at, which is the second phase, you get to start to look at your thought patterns and your belief systems, your operating system. But before that, that's why we say, a lot of times people will arrive in my sphere and say, I've been in therapy for 15 years and nothing has really changed. As you said, I understand things,
Right.
but nothing's really changed for me. And I think a lot of the time, what has happened is that they don't have the nervous system regulation to be able to change the patterns, right? And I think I just wanted to name earlier what a painful place to be in. It's almost worse to know why you understand your behaviors and not be able to change them, because once we understand them, we feel like we should be able to at that point. So it's almost worse, to understand it and not have the skills and the tools to do any different.
It is. And I tell people you can trick your mind. Like you can say all the mantras in the world, but when the rubber hits the road and you have to act, you're not acting. Everything comes from your body to your brain, not the other way around. So,
Yes,
regulate first, then heal. Like you can't, first of all, you can't do any healing when you're not regulating because
absolutely.
you're not even working from the right part of your brain.
Yes, you don't have access to the part
You
of your
don't have
brain that can
access.
establish. So in
No.
your example with your client who, was trying to develop that new pattern, there was a couple things going on, right? Which is so genius that you gave her another story, because one of the things that happens for us is our brain doesn't have any other way to go.
Right.
It's the only show in town is that these people are reacting to me in a negative way. So you gave her another story that
Right.
wasn't there. There was no past. She had no choice in those moments, right? And that's what happens to us when we become adapted in that way. So you gave her another choice, but she must have been working with you on her regulation, because
Oh yeah.
otherwise there wouldn't that other path wouldn't have taken form. It
No,
would have
it would
just been
no.
rejected. Yeah,
Right.
so it's we need the foundation first, and then we can go into what are those alternative neural pathways that I can build now that I'm using my executive functioning, my prefrontal cortex, as opposed to my limbic brain. And that's what we do. We reconnect with the part of us that can heal and change
Yes.
as a necessary foundational step. And then the third part is the easy and the fun part, which is own it. You've done the work, now build the life. Now let's, start brainstorming, start dreaming, and take we can start then taking the steps, because you have the capacity, the energy, the right mindset to take those steps. Most of us as humans, right? We want to start at that third phase right away. We're just
Oh yeah.
like, I want to change right now. I want everything
Yeah.
to be different today, without
Right.
taking the time to do the first two foundational pieces. And that's frustrating. And I get that. And I was certainly there forever myself. But taking the time to build it really is the fastest way.
Yeah. It really is. And that's the good thing about having therapists and coaches and whoever you have that has already tried all these tools and has already
Mhm,
started
mhm.
accumulating this toolbox of tools
Exactly.
because it doesn't have to take 30 years. I mean, it takes time, don't get me wrong. And I
Yeah.
truly believe that God unravels another layer of that onion as you're ready to deal with it. So it's a lifelong process, but there's no A to Z. There's no do these 26 steps and you're going to be good.
Yes. Yes. I
It's
love that you're saying that. Yeah.
it's just not a thing.
Yeah. And that's kind of that thing that we like to do as humans, where we're like looking for something outside of us to save us, right? Just give me the thing to do and I'll do it. And but the thing is, you have to tap into your own wisdom and
Right.
your own, understandings. It's not something that someone can give you.
No, they
And
can nope,
so,
they can give you the tools, but they cannot get in your soul. They cannot, they can't do the work for you.
right.
Like they can't. But it's interesting because I've gotten a lot more into like the energy work part of it and
Mhm.
I do a biofrequency scan. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, like a bioresonance scan with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
voice that literally comes up with it. It does about 171,000 different frequencies. But what it does over time for people is it establishes patterns. So I love that you talked about patterns because
Mhm.
it's the same thing when people come to me and they say, Tammy, I need tea tree oil for my hair because it's falling out. well, let's figure out why your hair is falling out because hair
Yeah,
just doesn't fall
exactly.
out unless there's a reason. And
Yeah.
9 out of 10 of the things that I deal with go back to the chronic stress.
Hmm.
So it's
Hmm.
it's like when people have, physiological symptoms, let's find the pattern that got you there. And it's
Absolutely.
life is about patterns.
Yes, precisely. Yeah, whatever it is, right? We
Hmm.
can find, yeah, the pattern and the root. And that's really what this work is about finding the root so that, as you said, like with the weed, because man, in the summer, when the weeds start coming up in the places where I have rock, oh my God, and having to go out there every 4 days, right? And pull those weeds if you just take the time to pull them out, from the root, then you're done. And
Yeah,
that's the
right.
nice thing about doing the work correctly or, in the most effective way, I should say, because you're not on that roller coaster where you're like, oh, it was good for 6 months and then I fell off and then but when you take the time to do it right, there is no back and forth.
No.
It's forward. You might have, some
Yeah,
dips in the road, whatever, but it's not where you feel like you're losing it all again
right.
and yeah, and starting over from zero.
Right. Because you start to make like you said, you start to make new patterns. So now certain things that used to be a trigger are now can just integrate right into a deep breath, move on. It's so
Yeah.
talk about some of what I know you have the freedom formula and it started with the nervous system and everything, but what are I mean, share with the audience, what are some of the things that you tried and used was as far as like modalities or what different things that you did personally?
Yeah, so I did try a lot, and I think that when we have that discussion, like, what did you try? We have people out there telling us how wonderful tapping is, how wonderful somatic experiencing is, how wonderful breath work, how wonderful a meditation
So
and
much.
all the things, right? And I lost my mind because I was reading, or taking courses or doing something where I was trying to implement, about 25 things all at the same time, right? And it's so confusing because you're like, well, if I attach myself to this, then well, what about that? We're bouncing around a lot. And I think at the end of the day, it's really about understanding our own systems, being
Hmm.
willing to try it in a way that is reasonable, not try something once and be like, yep, nope, that didn't work for me, right? But it's
Right.
really about getting to know your system instead of saying, okay, I'm going to use this tool, it's going to change me. Understanding, wow, as a first step, what is going on in my body when I tune in. It's surprising how many of us just live from the neck up and we don't
Yeah.
even know we have a body. And that was me. I did not want to be in my body. That's where all the pain, that's where all the scariness lived. I didn't want to be there at all, but I didn't know I wasn't in my body because since it started so early, that's who I was and what was normal
Right.
for me. So one of the things that I finally learned after many years of just turning to tool after tool was that I had to be willing to be inside and be embodied and be aware of what was happening in my body. And that was really just such a foundational step. I don't know that we can't skip that. That
No.
has to happen. That's where
No.
safety lives. So
Well,
yeah,
I mean, you just said it. That's where safety lives. And
yeah,
until you feel safe in your body. And I love that. And I love like you said, just be aware. And
yeah,
I've had people say to me, I wake up 3 a.m. in the morning and I can't get back to sleep. And it's like, I say, well, what do you try? Well, I tried telling myself I'm safe and I try doing this and I try doing that and I try doing this. And I'm like, get out of your head and into your body. It's the first thing
yes.
get out of your head and into your body because the more you try to convince yourself what you're supposed to be doing, you're getting angry at yourself for not doing it. So I'm just like, just try starting at your toes and squinching your muscles and then
Mm,
relaxing them and just go all the way up your body. How'd you feel? Oh my gosh, I felt great because it was getting out
yeah,
of your mind and into your body. And
yeah, yeah.
that is critical to the whole
It
process.
really is. It really is. And that's why, and there's challenges with that, right? And there's so many different ways to help you do that. But I never start with the ways. I start with the understanding that we have to open up to and notice what's there, because
Yes.
rather than be prescriptive with a tool, I want your body to tell you what tool it wants to use,
Right.
and for you to have a big tool belt of things. Oh, I really like this. And I do use a lot of somatic experiencing practices. When I'm angry, I like this tool. When I won't, am feeling
Hmm.
this. It's not about, we often think of our body-based tools as, I use this to calm me down. Well, that's might be nice sometimes, but we don't ever approach, I don't anyway, approach a tool or my body. Like if my body's having an experience of being super stressed, I'm actually not going to go and do some breathing exercises that help calm me down. I'm going to do something that helps me process and metabolize that energy. Because when I
Right.
tell my body, stop being stressed, stop being anxious, my body's like, hello, there's actual danger here. Like, there's a reason why I'm feeling this way. So don't tell me, just calm down,
Right. No,
Yeah. So
that's the worst thing you can do.
exactly. And that's why people will often say, and it's funny because they think that they're failing because they're not doing their meditation. I had a conversation yesterday. Oh, I'm really stressed out. I'm having all these, and of course I'm not doing my breathing and my meditation. So I really need to get back to that. And and this judgment around not doing it. I said, no, your body doesn't want breathing and meditation. It wants to use this energy, right? You were pumping with it with the cortisol and the adrenaline, and then we're like, just be nice, just
Yeah, and then
settle
it's like,
down.
stop. You can't just
Yeah.
turn that off. It is funny. I'm actually in the middle of like a 30-day nervous system reset thing I'm doing on Instagram just because I hate being live on Instagram. So I thought, well, I better do it. So just to get on live, just to
Yeah.
practice. But it's so different how everyone is. Like some is, breathe in and slow down. This morning was shake it out. Like literally, like just shake it out.
Yes.
We talked
Yes.
about an animal instinct. Sometimes it's like I tell people though, like you said, you just have to be
Mhm.
it's inside. So sometimes if you just put one hand on your heart and put one hand on your belly and say, what do I need right now? The
Yeah.
answer will come to you.
Yes. Yes. That's when you know you've hit the jackpot, because then you have someone, right? And in my mind, that is the highest form of attunement.
Right.
I have somebody right here beside me 100% of the time, 100% devoted to me, that wants nothing more than to understand what I need and provide it.
Right.
So when we can tune into the body and the body's like, shake, and you're
Yeah.
like, I'm on it, and you
Hmm.
respond to that lovingly. That's the goal. The goal is not to calm the body. The goal is not to, achieve some certain state. The goal is to hear and respond. And when you do that, you bring safety, you reparent yourself in the highest form, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, as far as, what were some of the tools, I tried them all. And now I use many, many different
Hmm.
tools, but in response to my system, as opposed to, giving it and making it prescriptive, telling the system, this is what we're
Yeah.
doing, and this is how you're supposed to feel. No,
Yeah.
the system leads and tells you what it is that it needs. And when you respond, you build that safety and that trust.
Mm.
And then, you do hear your inner compass and your wisdom.
Right. And of course, it doesn't hurt to have, people will Google, I'm having an anxiety attack. What do I do? It doesn't hurt to have some of these tools in your tool belt just as options, but you still have to see what works for you. The biggest one I use is a panic attack because I remember when I used to have panic attacks, someone telling me to take a deep breath, that was the worst thing I could have done because I thought I was choking anyway.
Yeah,
So if I
exactly.
can't breathe and I feel like I'm dying, why would I hold my
Yeah, yeah.
like,
And
you know
that's
what I
what
mean?
frustrates me, is because people will try it. They won't have a good result. They'll think this doesn't work, right? So now they've now do not have that as a possible modality, which could be very helpful in the right situation for
In the right
them.
situation, right?
Or they think, I'm the problem, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
so broken that these tools that are out there for everyone else to use and
Mm-hmm.
that seem to work for the rest of the world don't work for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I want you to give your perspective on this because I do get a lot of questions about this with people
Yeah.
that I work with. And a lot of my podcasts are geared towards people that I work with because sometimes it's like I feel like when I talk to them, it's want, 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 want. And then they hear it from
Yeah.
someone else. They're like, oh, that's what you were trying to say. I'm like, Boing. But
Yeah.
anyway, when you get to that point where you're feeling it in your body, your natural instinct is to do what? It's to run away from it, that
Mhm.
feeling. What is your suggestion for that?
Yeah, so this is such a great question because it's going to happen, and it's going to happen in, to some degree. I mean, I have people, and myself too. I didn't even know that I was running away from it. But what I would do is I would sit down and I would try some tools, and I might do something for a minute or two and be like, oh, I think the dishwasher's done. Did I put the clothes in the dryer?
So
Oh,
then
I
you
better
ran
go
away
do
from it.
that. And then I just left, but I didn't have the conscious awareness that
Right.
I was keeping it. But man, when I realized that I was doing that and said, no, we're going to stay here,
Mhm.
that's when it got really hard. And I was like, oh, wow, look at what I was doing, that whole time.
Mhm.
But it's a paradox. And so I can see why people get really confused when we talk about this issue, because it feels like a little bit of a maze here, because what do you need to be back in your body and to be able to feel what's going on in your body? What do you need? Safety. But you you're looking to build safety. You have no safety because you're not in your body, but you need
Right.
safety to feel in your body. So you're like,
Right.
yeah. So it makes sense that this is so confusing. And so the way I think about it, and the analogy that I give in the book, because this is a challenge that I name, because it's going to happen. All of your feelings, everything that's been trapped in your body as a result of your experiences so far, the way I think of it is like a dark alley, and everything that you have experienced, and all of those emotions are in your body. And in order to cross over and cross through that dark alley, and there is no other way around it, right? You have to go through that dark alley if you want to get to safety, which is on the other side of that alley. But you've been mugged down that alley. You've been beaten down that alley, right? You have no desire to go down there.
Right.
So the last thing we want to do is push ourselves down there and say, you're going down that, dark alley. I don't care how scared you are. We have to get over, if we want safety, we have to get over to the other side, right? That doesn't build any kind of safety or resilience. It
Right.
actually can re-traumatize and make things worse. So this time, before we go down the alley, we're going to resource ourselves, you know, and that looks like going down the alley. But this time we have a 375-pound bodyguard with us named Thor. We have a lantern. We have pepper spray. We have, everything we need. We have a wise guide that can tell us, how to navigate. So now when we go down, it's still a little, a little bit scary, but because we have resourcing, we can do it. We have enough safety to go and to explore what's in the body.
Right.
But so we have to build that first. And again, that's something that, might take a little bit of time. We might need to start, depending on the individual system, we might need to start by just noticing nice things, or noticing the your big toe for a bit, right? And start to get familiar with and open to the idea of exploring the body in that way before we go into any of the other, more challenging
Intense
experiences.
feeling.
And so,
Yes.
yeah, so there's all these ways that we resource ourselves, both externally and internally, so that we can, but we do it with intention, and we know our window of tolerance. So we're not stepping past that on a regular basis. We
Right.
might touch into it, but we know how to come back to regulation and say, okay, another day.
Right.
And that the approach is what allows us to become embodied without overwhelming us so much that we shut it down. And I'm sure you've seen so many times people have tried bravely to overcome, their trauma and to get inside the body, etc. And they've done it in ways that where they didn't have the resourcing. And
Right.
it's yeah. And then, and then it gets longer. It's like, okay, I'm not trying that again. And it becomes
Exactly.
5 years,
Yep.
okay, now it's been 10 years since I tried because
Mhm.
it we can really set ourselves back.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's why, yeah, I caution people. It's baby steps. Everything in healing is baby steps because just like you were, I mean, the things that happened to you when you were a child, even the little things, everything seemed big.
Oh
And when
gosh.
you're
Yeah.
dealing with trauma and when you're dealing with reaction, you're back in that childlike moment. So
Yes.
everything seems, I mean, things that like people flip out on and they're like, oh my God, now looking at that, that was so dumb. And I'm like, but you were back there
Mhm.
when you had that reaction. So it was still really big. So yes, the outsider might have been like, what was that about? But it
Mhm.
was big to you. And kind of like you started, and we're going to circle right back to the beginning when you said it doesn't matter big T, little t, middle T, all that trauma, if
Mhm.
it changed the way you looked at the world and it changed the way you looked at yourself,
Yeah.
it will be with you until you process it and deal, with it and make peace with it or whatever you have to do, whatever becomes of it.
Yeah.
But, those I that's why you never compare. You never compare like, oh, well, I didn't have it as bad as this person.
Right.
It,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if it changed the way you look at yourself and the world, you deserve to process it and
Yes.
to
Yes. Yes.
yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. I love that you
Absolutely.
said that and reminded us that again.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah. So this was super fun, but tell people how I know we could go on forever. I would
Yeah.
love to, but tell
Yeah.
people how they work with you and what you do and how they can get hold of you and reach you.
Yeah. So the best place is probably the website. It's lorimontre.com, LoriMontry.com. And you can also find me on YouTube and on all the social media platforms, Lori Montre. And what I'd love to offer your readers is a little bit more of an understanding of the framework that we talked about, and that can be found in the introduction to the book. You're Not the Problem. The book's
Okay.
actually coming out next month, April 25th. So it's an exciting time. Looking forward to sharing that out in the world. And also, the book and the important work that you're doing by spreading this message and letting people know, that there are ways that they can overcome these challenges. And so the You're Not the Problem movement is something that is very dear and important to me, where we just reach as many people as we can to help them understand that truly they're not the problem. It's the adaptations, and we can adapt again. So there's a designated Facebook group called You're Not the Problem, and I would love to have anyone and everyone in that group to just to build that community.
Is that
And
your
to,
group? That's your community?
yes, so
Nice.
I'd love to have Tammy. I'd love to have you in there as a beautiful resource. Just sometime you plop a post in there to remind us. It's just where the conversations can happen
Yep,
around. Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. I will be honored actually. So thank you. And before you go, first of all, thank you for coming. But before you go, I want you to leave the listeners with one final piece of advice or words of wisdom or something to take with them to make their day a little brighter.
Mm. Yeah. Gosh, so many things and so many things that we touched on. And I think that when I answer a question like this, I think it really comes back to what we discovered together here and talked about inner resourcing and being your own resource and taking care of yourself. And I think that starting with something as simple as 2 to 3 minutes in the morning when you wake up, giving to yourself, doing that practice that we talked about, maybe putting a hand on your heart. Hey body, what do you need today? What can I do for you? Oh, you want to sway? Fantastic, let's sway for a moment. Oh, you want to do a big old growl or you want to shake your hand, whatever it is, right? And I love that you're giving, various tools, and I give a lot too, because you want to have something that you can just pull out. But just taking those few minutes where you consistently show up. Nervous systems love consistency and reliability, right? So by
Mhm.
showing up every day for 2 or 3 minutes, things can grow from there. I think it's a really lovely seed and a great place to start.
Perfect. I absolutely love that. And it does make such a big difference. And your body talks to you every moment, every reaction, it's just talking to you all day long. And I keep saying, especially going back to the patterns, listen to your body talking before you have to listen to it scream.
Yes. Yes. What a great, we need bumper stickers and t-shirts and hats that say
I
that,
know.
because it's a
Really,
hundred percent true.
it is because it's talking to you. And if you don't listen, eventually you will have to listen to it scream. And we don't want that for you.
Mm-mm.
So, again, thank you so much. Honored that you came on and talked to us. Love it having you here. And for everybody else out there listening, you heard it. I mean, you are just perfect, absolutely perfect, just the way you are here, right now. And you are way more than enough. So just know that you deserve it. She talked about sitting beside, that one person that always has your back. Treat yourself like your own best friend. Well, thank you all.
Amen.
Yes, we will see
Mhm.
you back next week. Thank you. Now find the record button. They do. Can't find it.